In this video, we're going to have a chat about video games. Welcome to GametechUK. So what do video games mean to you? What do they mean to me? It's a very all-encompassing hobby as far as I'm concerned. For you, it might be something just casual that you put on a Thursday or a Friday evening after work. It may be something that you put on every day after work. It may be something that you do during the day because you can't work. Video games are a fantastic way of escape, fantastic for your mental health and well-being, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful hobby. For me, it all started early 80s with the 8-bit revolution, and it really was a revolution of entertainment for young people really wanting to get their hands on computers, home computers. It was such a evocative subject. It was such a privilege almost to have a home computer in your home or your bedroom or your front room. Don't forget, back in those days, schools only had one, maybe two computers. They were usually the more sort of boring end of the BBC Micro. But in W.H. Smith's or Curry's, you could go in there and see Commodore 64s, ZX81s, Amstrad CPC 464. Such exciting times. Computers very quickly become part of popular culture. They are and always have been part of our lives. And there was nothing better than going home after school and just seeing that screen, turning it on and having ready and that flashing cursor saying, I'm ready to do whatever you want to do, whether that be programming some basic, playing a collect 'em up like Jet Set Willy, or maybe even a text-based adventure. It was ready for all those adventures and possibilities on that computer. Almost overnight, computers became the subject to talk about at school, whether it be what computer have you got, what games are you playing, can I swap some games, can I record your games, are you programming anything, how did you get it to do that, could you write that down in my exercise book so I can try it when I get home. Just everyone was talking about computers. And it was weird though, because there was this juxtaposition, certainly in the press and just a general consensus that if you spoke and played and dealt with computers, you were a bit of a nerd. But everyone was talking and playing and speaking about computers. One thing I do remember from those days is that outside of the cost of the initial computer, which was huge, was how expensive in comparison to today some of the games and software are. They were way above sort of pocket money level. In fact, it took quite a few years for Mastertronic to come up with their $199 range, which really was sort of pocket money price. But if you wasn't lucky enough to have access funds to be able to go and buy games, you used to rely on your friends. Swapping games, recording games, piracy become commonplace with the tape-to-tape decks that were available of the day. And of course you had magazines where you could type in the listings from the day. There was nothing better than going down the magazine shop Saturday morning, buying a magazine, coming back and spending the rest of Saturday typing in a game. I remember when I was young looking for a games magazine. I can't remember what the game was, but there was a game that I wanted to get. And in those days you'd send a postal order off or a check, and once it's cleared they would then post you the game direct from the publisher. But there was an address and a phone number, and the address was only a couple of miles away from me. So I rung them up on a Saturday morning and said, can I come and pick this game up in person? They said, yeah, of course you can. Bring your money, you can take it away. So I remember cycling a couple of miles, and it was a very nondescript building upstairs, and it was quite messy, but there was computers everywhere. There was a tape copying machine. They were printing out the inlays. Oh, it was just such an exciting time. I remember saying to them, how do I get into this industry? And back then it was just like, do well at school and, do your best. There wasn't really a career path. But I remember just looking around the offices and talking to people and just being so excited to be that close to the game industry. I was really late getting to 16-bit. I couldn't afford it, so it was many years before I got a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo. And I think financially I was just trying to hang on to those 8-bit roots because that was the computer I had at the time. And I used to think, those games consoles, they're just, the passion isn't there for me. And in a funny kind of way, I still think that. It was just a small box. You did just put the cartridge in. You did just switch it on. And that was it. It was more about the game. With the computer, full-size keyboard, you could type in your own game. You could make your games up. There was more passion for me in home computing than there was with sort of a home console. Then I got my first home computer. Now, actually, at the time, there wasn't much choice for a general member of the public to actually buy a computer, and they were really expensive. The competitors were Time and Tiny from mail order, and they did start to have shops in high streets. But they had PC World, so you had Packard Bell and Compaq. Those were the main sort of choices, if you like, as a general member of the public. I went with Tiny. So the disadvantage of Time and Tiny was the fact that they were mail order only. So you would go into PC World and buy a Compaq or a Packard Bell, take it home, be playing that day. I remember it was the longest 28 days of my life waiting for my Pentium 2 450 with a Voodoo Banshee. I mean, the graphics card was called a Voodoo Banshee. It was still one of the best names ever for a computer component. When it was delivered, it had so many components and boxes. It was literally stacked up in my hallway, and I couldn't wait to get it all set up. And I still remember it was such affection, and I upgraded it and actually kept it for years. One of my first experiences with online play, believe it or not, was Colin McRae on the PC, where you could go in and you could set your network settings, and I ended up playing with someone from God knows where across the other side of the world. It was a real special moment. Over the years, I've owned or had access to most computer devices or games console or handheld devices. I love it. It's what I do. It's my main passion. It's where I spend most of my time and money in this beautiful hobby, like I said. But that brings me around to sort of the point of this video on what does the games industry look like today, and what does it mean to us as gamers? The internet has blown the video game industry beyond stratospheric levels. It's bigger than the film industry and the music industry put together. Teams are now in their hundreds and thousands of people are putting together these games that we love to play. No more bedroom coders. These are huge teams with shareholders that need paying. And that brings some expectation. It brings some level of hype. I remember my first product that I was ever overhyped about was the original Watch Dogs. The videos that you used to watch of the original Watch Dogs, the man, Aiden, isn't it? I can't remember, walking down the road, and just so much NPC activity, the weather, everything's going on. Then we get our first taste of an E3 downgrade. It was never the game that was promised, and that's a bit of a theme. One of the advantages of gaming today in comparison to the old days is how cheap it can be. If you were, for example, to get a cheap second-hand PC or a games console, you can live off of free games. Okay, you have to make your way through the microtransactions, which can be like walking through a minefield, but you can actually today game for free. That's something you couldn't do in the past. So that part is a great part of the industry. And people obviously complain about the price of AAA games being released today, hitting 70 to 80, sometimes more. But I think people do forget that in the days of the Mega Drive, that was a similar cost, and that was in the 90s. So games aren't as expensive as initially made out, especially if you buy the right game that you're going to be interested in. But most importantly, if the publisher and developer delivers and gives you the game that they promise, that can be fantastic value for money. Unfortunately, that's not happening very often these days. I compare it to the analogy of going to the fun fair and playing the whack-a-mole machine. You know, the little moles that pop up and you hit them with a hammer? That's us. We're the moles. We're the moles in the gaming industry, just popping our heads up, getting excited over that new game announcement, that new IP, that new device. And time again, we're hit on the head. It wasn't what was promised. It isn't very good. Get back down. But all too quick, we come back up again because we've got hope. We want these video games to be what they're promised. But again, it just doesn't happen. It's not all bad. There are diamonds in the rough. There are particular publishers we all like or game series that we all flock to because you know you're going to get what was promised and what is delivered. But that gap, that cavernous gap between an initial sort of offering of a project and what you get at the end of it with all the hype in between, it's just becoming unacceptable, really. And I think as gamers, we're looked upon as a bit of a cash cow by these huge publishing companies. Give them an extra gun, they'll pre-order it. Oh, just release it. We'll fix it in a patch. They'll suck it up. And it's becoming commonplace. And I suppose the only way around that is to vote with our wallets, to be more choosy about the particular products that we get hyped about. A publisher only has to release a sort of cinematic trailer of a new game they're sort of putting together, and we lose our mind. I suppose in a way that's just got to stop, and we've got to judge it on the product that they give us. Something that's survived through all these years of gaming, right from the start, right up until today. The bit that I enjoy the most is the camaraderie of gaming. Talking to other people that are perhaps playing the same game as you, or even a different game. Talking about games, sharing hints, sharing tips, sharing opinions on a purchase. I love that. And that's been there ever since the first days of my Amstrad and all the way through the gaming sort of journey, if you like, right up until today. That is the bit that I still love and enjoy about this beautiful hobby. So, as always, I would love to know in the comments section below, what's your sort of journey with gaming? Where did it all start for you? What do you think of the current state of the gaming industry? Are you a lifelong gamer? Maybe you've just got a console for the first time and you're trying out gaming for the first time? I would love to know in the comments section below. And I'm sorry if you have heard this little fellow throughout this video. He's in my gaming room, so he's more than welcome. You probably heard him in this video, but I'd love to know all of those things in the comments section below. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.